Hello, how are you today? Do you want to dive into a book that might just surprise you, whether it becomes your next favorite or one you might skip? Let's find out what readers are saying about it.
Marins reads, who has 39 likes, says, Junie, Erin Crosby Eckstine's haunting debut, is the story of an enslaved young woman in Alabama, pre-Civil War, who loves literature and poetry and dreams of a future where she and her family are free. When her master's daughter receives a new suitor and his family, Junie and the guest's coachman, Caleb, develop a friendship that deepens into more. But her free spirit is squelched when things become violent and painful family secrets come to light. This incredibly moving novel is based on the ancestral history of the author's own family. Because of this, there is a very strong connection between the writer and her story which the reader is able to tap into. The story has an incredible blend of genres including elements of mystery, romance and magical realism. Beyond that, the writing is evocative, the prose exquisite. The characters are all so well developed. It is hard not to become emotionally invested in their futures. This story is full of heartbreak and hope, and ultimately one that will stick with me long after reading it, and its included author's note, which may or may not have made me tear up. Read if you like fantastic debut novels, Black American history, magical realism, emotional reads, romance. Subplots. This Cursed House by Del Sanders. Thank you PRH Audio for the gifted copy. Kezia Dua, who has 174 likes, says, my head says 3, but my heart says 4 so naturally. I have to go with 4 as my first sentence makes clear. It wasn't exactly easy to decide how I ultimately felt about this book. But I loved all the emotions it evoked in me. It was a slow-paced read, which left me a little bored at times. But I still found the story interesting, sad, and even angering. I'd also dare to call this story unique because, unfortunately, most of us, myself included, go into these kinds of stories with certain expectations. Especially when they're set during such a horrific time in history. But this book surprised me by not giving me what I expected. Instead, I got a fascinating main character who carried so much passion, love, and anger even when no one believed she had any right to. There were moments when I found myself thinking, Junie, please calm down. These people are only going to hurt you. And that's when I realized how deeply this book had impacted me. It challenged me to think beyond my preconceived notions about this period in history. That said, I still feel like straying from historical accuracy in stories like this can be risky, given how sensitive the subject matter is. Not that I am claiming to know everything about the past, I am still learning so much, but I could tell the author was aiming to write something different from what we might expect. And while the pacing was slow at times, the story was still invigorating. There were enough intense moments that kept the book engaging overall. The paranormal elements didn't surprise me because I actually hate going into a book blind. If I hadn't known about the paranormal aspects beforehand, I would have been completely thrown off as for how much of an impact those elements had. Honestly, I couldn't really tell you. I didn't love or hate them, they were just there. And I was like, okay, sure. A lot of the characters seemed simple on the surface, but they definitely had layers of complexity if you really thought about them. Overall, though, they all played integral roles in the kind of story the author was trying to tell. I really enjoyed reading this perspective on American history, and I appreciated how the author sprinkled in some reveals to add a touch of mystery. The mix of romance and deep family love was also a nice touch. I am definitely looking forward to seeing what else this author has in store. Katie, who has 14 likes, says, I am legitimately at a loss for words. Junie is the most vibrant, brilliant character I've come across in a long time. Her relationships, both with her family and beyond, are so sharp and dynamic. The way she juggles her role as an enslaved woman with her role as a strong-willed, kind-hearted, caring human being is beautifully detailed and absolutely heartbreaking. I have never seen such determination and will to survive as I have in Junie. A truly life-changing novel. I can't wait to recommend it a million times over. Jenna, who has 15 likes, says, "Wow, I powered through this book in 2 days. The thought I repeatedly had is that there's something for everyone in it. It's vivid and well-researched historical fiction with lots of sensory detail. There are lovely descriptions of nature. There is a paranormal magical realism element that I did not find overwhelming. There are action-packed scenes as well as domestic or introspective scenes. There is romance, as well as both loving and complicated friend and family relationships, including sisterhood. There is grief. There are scary villains and there is suspense and fear, and then there is Junie, a protagonist who jumps right off the page. A sensitive, passionate, and imaginative young woman who is enslaved, dreamy, internally conflicted, and a bit frustrating at times. Junie reminded me of Jo March. And this book sometimes felt like a mix of elements from Little Women and Beloved. It's essentially a Bildungsroman giving us the voice, experience, and identity formation of a teen girl growing into adulthood while living under conditions of slavery. Although the style is extremely different, it also reminded me a bit of Demon Copperhead, since both books try to give authentic voice to marginalized and non-traditional young protagonists. In the beautiful afterword and author's note, which I strongly recommend not skipping, Erin Crosby Eckstine relates some of the family and local history that inspired her writing and also describes a goal of telling a kind of story she was having trouble finding. One about realistically complex and unique people with all the fully human thoughts and emotions, goals, talents, interests, quirks, relationships, etc., who also happen to be enslaved. In this sense, this book was a great one to read after James, which does something similar, although again in a very different way. How is Eckstine a debut author? Surely this will be a standout debut novel of the year. Books like this are reasons it's wonderful that book clubs exist, not being one to gravitate toward historical fiction. I never would have read it had it not been a selection of a book discussion group I am in. I am so grateful I read it. Christina Reading Through Atlanta, who has 23 likes, says, "I found this to be just okay. Ultimately this would work better as a young adult novel, as the coming-of-age angle, language, and tone read very yaw. Solid characters, quirky use of magical realism, interesting plot turns, albeit some rather surprising. The modern language is jarring at first. The first half feels like an almost sanitized version of slavery, while the second half is utterly dramatic yet somewhat more realistic, which also kind of threw off this read for me. The author makes note that she wanted well-rounded characters, but felt like a slight disservice to somewhat simplify the experience.